We are rolling. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alan, and welcome everyone to our 2021 World Storytelling Day event hosted in Newport, Australia. We are the Newport Storytellers who gather to practice the art of oral storytelling, and I am the current coordinator, a task not possible without the support of Alan Davies, who is co-hosting with me today. Alan, it's over to you.
We are part of the Newport Fiddle and Folk Club, which is a community-led
are.
organisation that values and makes space for music makers and storytellers to learn and share their art.
This year, the theme for World Storytelling Day is New Beginnings, and we are Zooming it so our friends from distant places can join us.
And we have a mix of storytellers and singers, 9 in all, I think. And having mentioned the theme, we're not overly strict about this, as 2021 is in some ways a new beginning as we emerge from the isolation and the lockdowns of 2020. Following the stories, we'll stop recording and you're welcome to stay on for the after party and chat.
Yeah, it could be quite wild. We'll see. So, Alan, let's get the ball rolling. I am going to begin with the acknowledgement, and then we can launch into the stories. Now, for those of you checking in from distant lands and perhaps don't know where Newport is, we are situated on the west side of the Yarra River, or Birrarung, the River of Mist. I've actually got a picture here. Can you see that? Can you see that, Alan? Am I holding it up properly? I don't know if you can see it. Can you see? I'm getting people waving
just a
at
little
me.
higher.
There it is. That's where we are. We are about 12 kilometres from the beautiful city of Melbourne via the Westgate Bridge, and it is customary in Australia before launching into an event to acknowledge the First Nations of this country. So Alan and I acknowledge that tonight we are speaking to you from the unceded sovereign lands of the Bunwurrung. We recognise their unbroken connection to country that has long been mapped by story, song and dance, and we pay our deep respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to the elders of all nations, and to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are with us today. Alan, would you like to introduce our first storyteller?
I'd love to, Jackie, if I'll just pin myself there, so to speak. Yes, so our first storyteller today is going to be M. Chandler. M's kindly agreed to monitor the chat for us, so I reckon we'll start with them. We've never actually met M face to face, but joining us on Zoom during the 2020 lockdown, M quickly established themselves as a skilled and original reteller of tales. And I just learned, because it's in the script, that M won the Australian Junior Championship of Stage Magic in 2012.
Yeah.
So please welcome M. Chandler with the story, The Well of the World's End.
Thank you, Alan and Jackie. Hello, everyone. I have a story, as Alan said, called The Well of the World's End, which comes from Scotland. And in fact, I have taken two versions of the same story and sort of squashed them together, so I like them better. But this story happens at some place and at some time, I can't say exactly when or where, when there was a king who had a wife, a queen, who was deathly ill, and no one knew how to cure her. So the queen gathered her three daughters together and said to them, one of you must go out into the world and find the well of the world's end, for only its enchanted waters will be able to cure my illness. So the queen's eldest daughter prepared herself and then set off and was away for a very long time. And when she returned, she was empty-handed. So it was the second daughter's turn. And she prepared herself and went off and was away for a very long time. And when she returned, she was empty-handed. So it was down to the queen's youngest daughter. She put a bottle in her bag, and with hope in her heart, she set off to find the well of the world's end. She asked everyone in town, do you know the way to the well of the world's end? But everyone replied, no, I do not. Then she asked everyone in the next village, do you know the way to the well of the world's end? And they all replied, no, I do not. Finally, the youngest daughter asked a funny old woman on the side of the road, do you know the way to the well of the world's end? And the funny old woman said, why, yes, I do. And she explained to the youngest daughter that she would have to go this way and that way and this for longer than you can bear, and then you'll be there at the well of the world's end. The youngest daughter thanked the funny old woman by the side of the road, and then walked this way and that way and this for longer than she could bear, and then she was there, at the well of the world's end. She took the bottle from the bag, and with hope in her heart, she reached down to collect the enchanted waters, but it didn't matter how hard she tried or how far she reached, she just couldn't do it. Her arms were too short or the water was too low, it didn't matter which, there was no way she could fill her bottle up. She knelt by the side of the well and began to cry, not knowing what to do next. And then she heard a sound. And when she looked up on the edge of the well, she saw a great big goggle-eyed frog. And the great big goggle-eyed frog looked at the youngest daughter and said, "Princess, why are you crying?" "I'm trying to reach the waters of the well of the world's end to cure my mother, but I just can't reach it," explained the youngest daughter. "Oh, just like the other two princesses I see," said the great big goggle-eyed frog. "Well, I'll offer you what I offered them. I'll fill up your bottle if you promise to marry me." Now, the youngest daughter was not in the habit of agreeing to marry frogs, but she did know this was the only way she'd be able to cure her mother, and she did dearly love her mother, so she agreed to marry the great big goggle-eyed frog. It took the glass bottle and jumped into the well of the world's end, and a few minutes later it emerged with a plop, with the bottle filled to the brim. The youngest daughter put it in her bag, and with happiness at heart, ran straight home with the great big goggle-eyed frog calling behind her, "Remember your promise!" But she wasn't really listening. She was running this way and that way and this for longer than she could bear, until she was there, back at her home. And she gave the bottle of enchanted waters to her mother, who drank it quickly and then was right as rain, fit as a fiddle, and jumping for joy. There was an enormous celebration that evening, and everyone who was anyone was invited. And when finally the celebration celebrating the Queen's good health had finished, everyone went home to bed, and it was left to the youngest daughter to douse the final few lights and to lock the front door. And just as she was about to lock the front door, she heard a wet knocking sound. When she opened the front door, she found the great big goggle-eyed frog staring up at her. And before she could say anything, the great big goggle-eyed frog began to sing. Gentle one, do you remember me? Remember the pledge you gave to me beside the well, my love, true love, beside the well, my love. Well, the princess didn't really know what to make of this, but she didn't want to leave the great big goggle-eyed frog sitting at the front door. So she picked it up, closed the door, and took the great big goggle-eyed frog into a cupboard, and then locked it and went off to bed. But before she could get to her bedroom, she could hear the frog singing again. Gentle one, do you remember me? Remember the pledge you gave to me beside the well, my love, true love, beside the well, my love. Well, the princess didn't like the fact that she just left the frog in the cupboard and it was still singing, so she went back downstairs, took the frog from the cupboard and walked all the way back to her room. And then she got shawls and pillows and cushions and blankets and made a lovely bed by the hearth in her room and placed the great big goggle-eyed frog there for the night. And then she hopped into bed and was about to pull up the covers when the frog began to sing again. Gentle one, do you remember me? Remember the pledge you gave to me beside the well, my love, true love, beside the well, my love. Well, the princess hopped out of bed and picked up the great big goggle-eyed frog, waddled back to her own room and put the frog right at the end, as far away from her face as possible. And then she hopped in and pulled up the covers and was about to close her eyes when the frog began to sing again. Gentle one, do you remember me? Remember the pledge you gave to me beside the well, my love, true love, beside the well, my love. So the princess wriggled out of the covers and picked up the great big goggle-eyed frog and put it right next to her head. And then she pulled up the covers and closed her eyes and was about to turn over when the frog began to sing again. Gentle one, do you remember me? Yes, I remember, said the princess. I just need some sleep. What can I do to stop you singing? Well, said the great big goggle-eyed frog, there's a rusty old sword hung over your bed. You could always use it to chop off my head. Now, the princess was not in the habit of chopping off frogs' heads, or anyone's heads for that matter, but she really needed some sleep, and the frog did tell her to, so she put the great big goggle-eyed frog on her bedroom floor and took the rusted sword hanging over her bed and brought it down with a great big thwack. And strange and peculiar, there was no frog head. And there was no frog body. In fact, there was no frog at all. Instead, there was a prince crouched on the floor, head perfectly intact. The prince explained to the princess how he had been cursed by a wicked magician, and the only way he could be uncursed, return away from being a great big goggle-eyed frog to his true princely form, was if someone who didn't know he was cursed chopped off his head. And that's exactly what the princess did. And so finally, the princess was able to get some sleep. And the next day, the prince summoned his glorious golden coach pulled by 6 white horses, and he took the youngest daughter away to his kingdom just beyond the well of the world's end. And in time, they fell in love and got married and had many, many children and lived happy and content till the end of their days.
Alan, you need to unmute.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you, Em. Brilliant as always. We're hoping to have a live event at the Newport Folk Festival, which is on the 25th, the 27th of June. And with luck, we will all get to meet you properly. Jackie, you have plans for this event, I believe.
I do, Alan. The plan is to record a live session at the festival and use the material to create another 4 episodes of the Newport Storytellers podcast. We are up to 6 so far, and 10 just seemed like a nice number to aim for. So please visit the Newport Fiddland Folk Club website at nffc.org.au and stay in the loop. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next storyteller, Davies. Dave is going to recount a tale told by Queensland bushman Lance Skuthorpe, 1870 to 1958. It's called The Champion Bullock Driver. Now, skill, energy, stamina are just a few of the needs of a bullock driver, plus what apparently we call today, some of us anyway, coarse language, to compel those stubborn beasts to haul heavy loads over rugged terrain. Dave loves nothing more than to fill in Australian history with short and tall tales. Davies.
We were sitting outside old Tallwood cattle station in our white moleskin trousers, elastic-sided boots and cabbage tree hats, watching 2 stockmen shoe a very wild Brumby mare. We were all slaves to the saddle and bridle, and there was nothing too heavy or too hard. The boss squatted on a new 4-rail fence. There were 20 panels of this fence, strong ironbark posts and rails. The first rails were mortised into a big ironbark tree, and there were 4 number 8 wires twisted around the butt, passed through the posts and strained very tightly to the big strainer at the other end. As though he dropped out of the sky, there appeared on the scene a very smart-looking man carrying a red blanket swag, a water bag, tucker bag and billy can. He put them down and said, "Is the boss about?" We all pointed to the man on the fence. The new chap took his pipe out of his mouth and walked up, a bit shy-like, and said, "Is there any chance of a job, boss?" "What can you do?" asked the boss. "Well, anything amongst stock. You can't put me wrong." "Can you ride a buck jumper?" "Pretty good," said the young man. "Can you scrub dash? Can you catch cattle in timber on a good horse before they're knocked up?" "Hold me own," said the young man. "Have you got a good flow of language?" The young man hesitated a while before answering this question, so the boss said, "Can you drive a rowdy team of bullocks just into my hand?" said the young man. The boss jumped down off the fence. Look here, he said, it's no good you telling me you can drive a team of bullocks if you can't. And pointing to a little graveyard, he added, do you see that little cemetery over there? The young man pulled his hat over one of his eyes and looked across and said, yeah? Well, continued the boss, there are 16 bullock drivers lying there. They came here to drive this team of mine. I watched the young man's face when the boss said that to see if he would flinch. But a little smile broke away from the corner of his mouth, curled around his cheek, and disappeared in his ear hole. And as the effect died away, he said, they won't put me there. I don't know so much about that, said the boss. I'll give you a trial, the young man suggested. It'd take too long to muster the bullocks, said the boss. But take that bullock whip there, standing near the big ironbark tree, and say, for instance, 8 panels of that fence are 16 bullocks. Show me how you'd start up the team. Right, said the young man. Walking over, he picked up the big bullock whip and very carefully examined it to see how it was fastened to the handle. Then he ran his hand along the whip, examining it as though he was searching for a broken link in the chain. Then he looked closely to see how the fall was fastened to the whip. After that, he stood back and swung it around and gave a cheer. First, he threw the whip up to the leaders and then back to the polers. He kept on talking and the whip went on cracking till a little flame ran right along the top of the fence. And he kept on talking and the whip kept on cracking until the phantom forms of 16 bullocks appeared along the fence. And he kept on talking and the whip went on cracking till the phantom forms of 16 bullock drivers appeared on the scene. And they kept on talking and their whips kept on cracking till the fence started to walk on and pulled the big ironbark tree down. That'll do, said the boss. Not a bit of it, said the young man. Where's your wood heap? We all pointed to the wood heap near the old bar kitchen. And they kept on talking and their whips kept on cracking till they made the fence pull the tree right up to the wood heap. We were all sitting around on the limbs of the tree and the young man was talking to the boss and we felt sure he would get the job when the boss called out, "Get the fencing gear, lads, and put that fence up again." Excuse me for interrupting, boss, said the young man, but would you like to see how I back a team of bullocks? Yes, I would, said the boss. So the young man walked over and picked up the big bullock whip again. He swung it around and called out, "Now then, boys, all together now." And the phantom forms of the 16 bullock drivers appeared on the scene again. And they kept on talking and their whips kept on cracking till every post and rail backed into its place. And the phantom forms of the 16 bullock drivers saluted the young man, then bowed and backed, right into their graves, recognizing him as the champion bullock driver.
Thank you, Dave. Splendid as ever. I know we've got some of our storytellers tonight are from Brazil and the UK, and what you heard was a real piece of Australiana full of colloquial language, which perhaps might be a bit of a mystery, but I think you're actually quite privileged to hear Dave telling that story. Now, in the event of any of you wanting to take up Bullock driving, I did do a bit of research and got a few tips. You need to give each of your bullocks a name so you can call them individually. So when you call them, you can ask them to adjust their pace. And if a whip is needed, it's flicked out in the front. I think Dave demonstrated this quite well. You flick it out in the front and then you have to swing it around your head several times, and then you lightly let it crack on the bullock that you wish to reach. But of course, when you do this, you must always check that there is no one behind you. I'm sure that's useful information for you all. Alan, who is our next storyteller?
Our next storyteller, Jackie, is Susan Hall. Susan has assisted with and initiated story events, including a previous World Storytelling Day at the Geelong Library. And on the 27th of March, coming up soon, she's arranged for us to tell stories at the Eltham Library. And this will be our first face-to-face event since 2019. And the details will be posted on the Newport Storytellers blog and on Facebook also. This evening, she has for us a retelling of The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen. It's an ageless story that speaks across generations and has a reaffirming message of a new beginning and belonging. So here's Susan Hall.
Thank you. Hans Christian Andersen's Ugly Duckling. Well, this story starts with Mother Duck sitting on her nest of eggs, patiently waiting for them to hatch. As the days go by, she sits there, and then suddenly, crack, 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 crack. Filled with happiness, she is absolutely delighted as 5 little golden ducklings appear. And then she looks around and realizes that there's one egg still sitting there, unhatched. This egg is a larger egg and slightly brown. Well, Mother Duck had made a promise to herself that she was going to love all her children at the same time. And so she takes her place back on the nest to wait a bit longer, tucking her 5 new little ducklings under her wings. The next morning, there's a vibration happening in that egg. And all of the ducks gather around, waiting for their last little duckling to come out. Suddenly there's a crack, and out pops a grey-coloured duckling. Its beak is a little too long. Its feathers are a bit scruffy. And its face, well, it's only the face a mother would love. And Mother Duck decides that that's what she will do. And so she lines her ducklings up to take them down to the pond so they can start their adventures on the water. Quack, 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 go the little ducklings. The ugly one goes, croak. And everyone looks around and starts laughing. Who made that horrible noise? Mother Duck keeps walking with her ducklings. But as she gets down to the pond, all of the other ducks coming over to check out her new brood of ducks, and they start laughing. What's this little coloured one here that's the wrong colour, grey colour? So Mother Duck swings them over to the other side of the pond where she can teach them by themselves. But all the siblings don't get along very well. The 5 little yellow ducklings start pecking on the grey duckling. He's made to feel unloved and unwanted. He realises that he's different and he doesn't understand why he is different. So one evening, when the moon was high, the ugly duckling thinks it's time for me to leave and find another place to live where I am wanted. And so off he swims and waddles along, And in the early hours of the morning, he comes across another group of ducks. And there are different looking ducks. And he thinks, okay, this is where I'll be. And he swims out to them. Hello, hello. And they all turn around. Quack, quack. Who are you? Quack, quack. What are you? Oh dear, you are such an ugly duckling. Oh, the ugly duckling's very sad at that response, and so turns and leaves. He finally comes to a much larger pond, and upon the pond is a family of geese. And the goshlings are the same colour as he, a brownish grey. Maybe this is where I belong. And so he swims out amongst the geese. Honk. Hello, who are you? Says the mother goose. Honk. What are you? Says the father goose. And all the little goshlings start swimming around and say, you sure look different. You sure look different. But the mother goose says, I think you look like you're someone who needs a home. You can stay with us. And so the ugly duckling's delighted. At last someone wants him and he can stay with the family of geese. So he spends his days swimming around with the goshlings and spending time with the family. And all is going well until early one morning, very early, a hunter shows up with a hunting dog. And the hunter takes out his gun. And as the geese take to the air, he starts shooting. Bang, bang, bang. And the hound dog runs into the water looking for the ones that have fallen or any that are left on the pond. The ugly duckling is terrified and he hides amongst the river reeds, sitting still, waiting for it all to go away. And then when he thinks it's right, he disappears away from that scene. Well, the ugly duckling had started to get a little bit bigger. He was growing more feathers. But winter was coming on and he knew he needed somewhere to shelter. And he was getting frightened. He didn't like this world that he'd been born in. He wanders around and he comes to an old farmhouse and there's a broken down shed and he finds a quiet corner in there and he puts himself in there and goes to sleep. And in the morning, he's woken by human voices. Hello, what have we got here? Says the farmer's wife. Why, says the farmer, I think this line looks like a duck. Oh, that's fantastic, says the farmer's wife. I love duck eggs. And so the farmer and his wife create a nest. And they feed him up and they wait. And they wait. And they wait. They're waiting for eggs to be delivered, but there's no eggs going to be coming from the ugly duckling. The ugly duckling is getting bigger and bigger. He's getting well fed. And as spring comes on, the farmer and his wife look at each other and says, well, I don't think this is no duck, I'm sure of that, and shoos him on his way. We certainly haven't got any eggs and he's just been eating. And so the ugly duckling once again is sent out all by himself. So he goes on looking for another pond and eventually he comes to a beautiful pond of clear water. It's got lovely water lilies in it. And he looks out and there's a bevy of swans on it. He's not game enough to go anywhere near them. He just stays on the shore, half hidden by the reeds. He wasn't wanted as a duck. He wasn't wanted as a goose. He wasn't wanted by the humans. He certainly is not going to be wanted by these elegant creatures. So imagine his surprise when one of them slowly glides across the water to him and says, my, what beautiful feathers you have, and so white, you just gleam in the sun. Well, the ugly duckling steps into the water and glides out so he can see his reflection. And what he sees, he realizes, I'm not a duck at all. I'm not even an ugly duck. I'm a swan. And he's so delighted at that. And with that, he glides out to join the other swans in the beautiful sunshine. And so, as he's entered the water with the swans, the sun shines and it's a new beginning for him, happy to be where he needs to be. Thank you.
And thank you, Susan, for that wonderful story, a great classic. And thank you also, Susan, for your ongoing support and your enthusiasm for all things story. Okay, so Jackie, over to you.
Back to me. Susan, I'm actually feeling quite moved by that. It's been a big couple of weeks in Australia, and been a lot of politics going on, and that story, I don't know, it's perennially beautiful and multi-layered. So thank you for bringing it into this space tonight. Well, now, it is my greatest pleasure to introduce my friend Cadu Cinelli from the southern part of Brazil. Cadu visited Newport over 5 years ago and even bravely attempted some of us as very simple dance. And if you know the Newportonians, you will know that's not so easy. But we had a lot of fun. Cadu loves telling stories with fabrics and textile props, and some of them made by him and some of them made by his textile partners. His favourite kinds of stories are those that remind us that we belong to this planet, to this endless universe, and life is an awesome adventure that must be lived. He is a member of Tapetas Contadores de Histórias, the storytelling carpets. But enough of my Portuguese. Did you like that? Yeah,
It's okay. It's okay.
Was it good? Was it good? Tell me later. That was Google Translate helping me with that. So anyway, enough of me. Here is Cadu with a goddess story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be here. So I have this book, this textile book here made in Peru by women, Peruvian hands. This is a Peruvian handmade textile book. So let's go there. Long time ago, in the highlands of Peru, there was a drought, a so strong drought that trees were without leaves. The rivers, there are no rivers. People were starving, thirsty, animals as well. Nobody could eat, nobody could drink. Everybody was there, starving. But everybody knows why, the reason why of this drought. Because of Mama Haiwana, the goddess of the seeds. She was responsible to grow crops and feed every animal, every human being. But she was responsible. But in that time, she forgot. Because she had a baby and she was so in love with her baby that she forgot to grow crops. She was taking care of him. Oh, baby, my baby, my baby, my baby. I love you. I love you. And that's why everywhere around was in drought. So the humans were worried. They want to eat. So they called all the birds in the sky. Please come. Please come. And yuk bird, the yuk bird, he came and listened all the asks, and he wants to help human being. And he said, okay, just wait. We have a plan. All the birds have a plan. Just wait. And all the birds in the sky, they were there talking with each other, having a plan. They wait for the next morning. And the next morning, they were there, just waiting Mama Haiwana. She was walking around in a valley when the yuk bird flew near her, and she was just watching him. Oh, the yuk bird. She was distracted when another bird just swapped near her, and she was so scared that he threw a lot of insects, a lot of flies over her eyes. Oh no, 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 no. She was crying. Oh, my eyes. I can't see. I can't see. And she left her baby. And he fall down. And before he hit the ground, the yuk bird catch him and flew up the sky. And she lost her baby. Where is my baby? I can't see him. She was blind. Oh, my baby, where is my baby? She cried and she screamed, where is my baby, please? Give back my baby. I want my baby back. I want my baby back. She couldn't see. She lost him. And over there, on Yuk nest, the birds were trying to take care of the baby, but the feathers, the wings, they are not made to take care of the babies. They try to feed him, but the pigs are not made to feed people, to feed babies. So as much as they try to care him, as much they injured him, as much they hurt him. At one moment, the baby stopped crying, stopped moving. So they realized that he was dead. Oh, they were worried. They took the baby and buried him just to be out of the problem. And they just said, don't say anything to the Mama Haiwana, please. Nobody tells nothing, please. And humans and animals, they were in silence. Nobody watched, nobody knew, nobody. After several weeks, Mama Haiwana could see it again. But she was so sad. She was crying all the time, asking and crying, where is my baby? But when she was there, near where the baby was buried, she could see a cloth. A small cloth. I can show here. A small cloth of her baby. And there she realized. And there she cried, a river of tears, and cried so much, that she wet all the land. She wet the earth, and the river came. And all the place with the body, with the baby, with his parts, the plants grow, and with his hands, the bananas came up. With the cheeks, the tomatoes came with his hair, the lettuce and potatoes and cauliflowers and many plants, fruits, vegetables came up with his body, with his part of his body. That's why the rivers and the winds taught humans how to grow crops after that day. That's why in the highlands of Peru, until nowadays, people thank Mama Haiwana and her baby every day, singing, dancing, and even telling stories to thank how they can eat, how can they grow crops, and how can they live. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Cadu. It is our great pleasure to have you join us. And yeah, we dream of the day when once again we can see you for real. And yeah, we'd like to see David Kidman for real as well. And you know, maybe you'll come again and share stories. You know, you've got a place here. Okay. Alan, it's back to you.
All right. Our next story is coming from Adrian Newington. Adrian's a musician, and that's normally the mode in which we hear him singing and playing. But tonight he is going to tell us a story, even though songwriting is his normal primary method of expression. Adrian's a keen explorer of life, both philosophically and spiritually. He's a composer of contemporary Christian music and many other genres where he aspires to always leave a positive and uplifting message and a hopeful attitude towards life. Here's Adrian now with his story, An Audience with the Master.
Thank you, Alan. Good evening, everyone. Briefly, my story has a slight introduction, and then it's a short story, possibly no longer than 5 minutes. This story is an adaptation of a similarly themed story I heard about 30 years ago. The detail in the story which gave me this inspiration is long forgotten, but I did manage to retain the basic concept or intention of the story. Having tried unsuccessfully over the decades to try and recall it, I've now come to finally understand the spiritual principles of the original concept sufficiently in order to bring forth a useful reinterpretation. This is a story that could find its place in any time or era. There was once a most enthusiastic spiritual seeker who was under the instruction of a wise and learned spiritual master. Come the first day of spring of his 40th year, the master summoned the student to have an audience with him. He said to him, "You have been with me now for many, many years, and I have taught you a great deal, and you have grown and developed both personally and spiritually with the knowledge I've given you. But now I would like you to spend some time in solitude and write down everything you know about spirituality and then bring it back to me." The seeker then respectfully took leave of the master, and after a number of months, when spring had passed into summer, returned with an exhaustive work of more than 2,000 pages. The master took the work and patiently examined its contents, all the while saying, very good, as he worked through each and every chapter. When his appraisal was complete, he said, "This is very good, but take it with you once again in solitude and try to refine it to something more concise whilst retaining its essence." The seeker, then happy with his master's comments, went back to his place of retreat and followed the instructions to find a more concise and simplified understanding of all that he knew. Again, after a number of months, and when summer had passed into autumn, the seeker once again returned with a more succinct understanding, reduced to about 1,000 pages. The master took the work and patiently examined its contents, all the while saying, very good, as he worked through each chapter. When his appraisal was complete, he once again said, "This is very good, but take it with you in solitude once again and try to reduce and refine it even more." Again, after the seasons had ushered in the chill of winter, the seeker once again returned with a more succinct understanding, condensed to about 500 pages. The master took the work and patiently examined its contents, all the while saying, very good, as he worked through each and every chapter. However, when the appraisal was complete, once again the master said, "Now this is truly very good, but take it with you in solitude once again and try even harder to reduce and refine it even more." Being somewhat bemused and disheartened, the student took leave of his master, whilst carrying a heavy concern that these ongoing changes and reductions would diminish his work and the subsequent recognition by people of his intellectual prowess. Yet, through this challenging experience, he recognised a need to regain a focus that spiritual learning is meant to promote humility. So, with continued resolve, and upon the return of spring, the seeker presented an even more succinct understanding, whittled down to a mere 50 pages. The master took the work and patiently examined its contents, all the while saying, very good. Very good. Truly, you are starting to understand spirituality. But when his appraisal was eventually complete, he said once again, "Although this is very good, take it with you once again in solitude and try to reduce and refine it even more." And so, after a greater absence than all the other previous occasions and lost to the changing seasons, the student, having thought deep and hard about the experience, eventually returned with a more condensed understanding of only a single page. The master took the piece of paper and beamed with a teacher's greatest joy and read aloud his student's single-page understanding. Learning and humility is surely important, but humility is the guardian to the heart, which allows knowledge to enter the heart and to bring forth the penetrating insight to see the deeper meaning of things. All my book learning will be for naught if it cannot enter the heart, for knowledge will surely remain as dry as the page it is printed on, if it is not kept pristine with humility and strengthened through compassion. The end.
Thank you, Adrian, for that wonderful story. And it's lovely to hear you telling a story. Very close to my heart, that story. I do a lot of editing at work, so being able to cut down to that sort of level, I can only aspire to.
Yeah.
All right. Over to you, Jackie, to introduce our next storyteller.
Yeah. Thank you, Adrian. It was, yes, lovely to hear you tell a story. And thank you. So now I have the pleasure of introducing my good friend Durgah Devi Palanisamy, a passionate storyteller who is fascinated by stories from across the world. She has found her new beginnings after moving to Melbourne from Singapore 5 years ago. I have quite a few friends now in Singapore after several visits and through storytelling networks, and it's been tough not being able to travel and visit Singapore. I've wanted to go, and I imagine it is a lot tougher for Dee and her family. So we think of you in that regard, Dee. Dee is proficiently bilingual in English and Tamil and enjoys being able to connect with her audience through the stories. Take it away, Dee.
Hi everyone, happy World Storytelling Day. And before I share my story with you, I would like you to take a moment to think about what the word new beginning means to you, okay? If I said, anybody says the word new beginnings, right? What is the first kind of image that comes into your head? And if you could actually make an image of this with your hands and your face, we're gonna do all of that on screen at the same time now. You ready? 1, 2, 3, new beginnings. Ah, that's awesome. If you could actually quickly glance your eyes over the screens, everybody's got a very beautiful image that they're sharing at the moment. And my new beginning actually started a really, really long time ago. And I grew up in Singapore. And as Jackie said to you, that I'm Singaporean, I'm of Indian descent, and my family moved to Melbourne 5 years ago. And growing up in Singapore is a really interesting experience if I were to share it with you. Have anybody of you besides Jackie been to Singapore before? Susan's been to Singapore, Dave's been to Singapore. Now, growing up in Singapore is a completely different story altogether, right? So I grew up in a completely orthodox Indian family where my mom would tell me, put your head down when you walk, don't look up at people, keep your heads buried in books, just no shorts, keep your thighs shut together, keep your shoulders down, and always smile. So I grew up pretty much like that, if that kind of makes any sense. And if you've also been to Singapore, you will know that Singapore is really well known for being a food paradise. And it's a great place for shopping. But it's also the only place that I know around this region where there's a 24-hour shopping complex. So the city never sleeps, and it keeps going and going and going. And that's how it was when we were growing up. My mom would always be shouting, படிச்சிட்டியா வேலை செஞ்சிட்டியா என்ன செய்யற ஐயோ வந்து உட்காரேன் என்ன பண்ணிட்டு இருக்க சாப்பிட்டியா படிச்சிட்டியா புக் எடுத்து வச்சிட்டியா. It was always about, have you eaten? Have you done your work? Have you taken your books? Are you ready? And that was how it always was. It was like I was always preparing to be on this great, amazing race. And one more thing about Singapore that you need to know is that success is measured by the 5 C's. Cash, credit card, your car, a condominium, and your career. Now, having a checklist like this, well, it just meant that every time, go, 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 go. And it was always about going somewhere, getting something done. And this is what shaped my upbringing and growing up in Singapore. How many of you have a little voice? Do you have a little voice in your head? A little voice that tells you know, hey, you look good today. Oh, I don't know, are you wearing that shirt out? Or, oh, that's a really great, you know, we all have that story, a little voice in our head that tells us what's happening. Well, my voice until recently, I came to discover, was my mom, my Indian, angry mom. And mom would always kind of talk to me in that way. What are you doing now? It's time to get up. It's time to get the kids to school. Are you ready? Why are you still in bed? And sometimes she would do it in our mother tongue, in Tamil. என்னடி செய்ற? நேரமாயிட்டு கிளம்பிட்டியா? ஐயோ குளிருதே என்ன செய்வே? நான் என்ன செய்வேன்? And this is how it was for me. Sometimes it still is. But my new beginning in Melbourne was really significant because when I came here, I was like Princess Jasmine from the story Aladdin, the Disney version, where it was a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view, no one to tell me no, or where to go, or say that I'm only dreaming, a whole new world. And that is what it was going to be for me. So in 2013, my husband came up and he said, well, we are moving to Melbourne. And oh my gosh, I was not ready to go. And by the time I already had 3 children, mom had passed away, but she was really living with me all the time. I had her in my head and my heart, and I would not let her go. But I was also terrified because this was me living my life. I was going to go on this Australian adventure by myself. And that time, I could not cook. I could not do any of the housework around the house. And all I could hear was my mom going, "Ennadi anga poi seive? What are you going to feed your children? What are you going to do? How are you going to take care of your family?" என்ன செய்வே? உனக்கு வந்து சமைக்க தெரியுமா? உனக்கு வந்து சட்டை மாத்த தெரியுமா? அயன் போட தெரியுமா? என்னதான் செய்வே? So I took her with me in my head and my heart, and I packed on this great big adventure. And December 2015, we came to Melbourne. And I was excited and scared at the same time. And when I first came, I was alone. I didn't come because my husband was still staying in Singapore. And it was like, as my story was unfolding day after day, week after week, month after month, as I would look past, and my view was the sky. There was no great big concrete jungle breaking my view. There were no little tiny houses that we had to look out from. You know, I could actually see the sky every single day. And as much as there were all these difficulties about raising a family in a foreign country, about building community, and about making friends, my new beginning happens every single day, even now. And as I live this amazing and blessed life that is filled with friends and stories, I always remember these words. A whole new world, 100,000 things to see. I'm like a shooting star. I've come so far. I can go back to where I used to be. Thank you for listening to this story.
Oh, oh, Thank you, Dee. Wonderful as always. And I love your personal stories. I always get to learn a little bit more about you. And it's been an absolute joy to be one of your friends, one of your new friends that you've made in Australia. Dee and I both belong to the Federation of Asian Storytellers. This is an absolutely fabulous organisation that connects storytellers across Southeast Asia and the Pacific, where there is so much fun to be had. I could talk on and on about some of the fun we've had with the Federation of Asian Storytellers and wonderful friendships that we have made. Alan, you're next.
Yes, indeed. And, well, last year when Newport Storytellers and all the other Newport Fiddle and Folk Club events were forced to go virtual, go online because of COVID-19, of course there was a lot of disappointment at having to give up our face-to-face events and go online. But there was a silver lining. People started connecting with us from interstate and overseas. And one of those people was our next storyteller, David Kidman from the UK. David has been a very regular attender at our events and has been well and truly embraced by the Newport Fiddle and Folk Club. He's now an honorary Newportonian. So I'll hand over to David now, and he's going to introduce his own performance. Here's David.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I'd just like to say thanks to Alan and Jackie and Dharma and all the crowd at NFFC for embracing me so warmly. They're fantastic people, fantastic atmosphere in all your events, so welcoming and such a high standard. And, you know, I'm just overwhelmed by the support and love and friendship. So thanks again before I start. Normally when I come to these storytelling Zooms, I contribute a song which is telling a story, a narrative of some kind. Normally they're actually quite uplifting. This one in particular, which I've chosen for today, it has the theme of new beginnings writ very large across it. In fact, some of you will probably know it from folk circles. It's a song which was written by Stan Rogers, a Canadian singer-songwriter who unfortunately died as a result of helping someone in a plane crash in the 80s. He wrote a very, very small body of songs which are incredibly uplifting. And this one is called The Mary Ellen Carter. And it's the story of the Mary Ellen Carter. And the chorus is significantly uplifting. It goes, rise again, etc. So be ready. I'm watching the mouths of the goldfish on the screen. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of joining in there. Now she went down last October in the pouring driving rain. The skipper he had been drinking, the mate he felt no pain. Too close to 3 Mile Rock and she was dealt her mortal blow, and Mary Ellen Carter settled low. There was just us 5 aboard her when she finally was awash. We worked like hell to save her, all heedless of the cost, and the groan she gave as she went down, it caused us to proclaim that the Mary Ellen Carter would rise again. Well, the owners wrote her off, not a nickel would they spend. She gave 20 years of service, boys, and met her sorry end. But insurance paid the loss to them, so let her rest below. Then they laughed at us and said we had to go. But we talked of her all winter, some days around the clock, for she's worth 250,000 afloat and at the dock. And with every jar that hit the bar, we swore we would remain and make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. Rise again, rise again, that her name not be lost to the knowledge of men. All those who loved her best and who were with her to the end will make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. All spring now we've been with her, on a barge lent by a friend. 3 dives a day in a hard hat suit, twice I've had the bends. Thank God it's only 60 feet, and the currents here are slow, or I'd never have the strength to go below. But we've patched her rents and stopped her vents, dogged hatch and porthole down, put cables to her fore and aft, and girded her around. Tomorrow noon we hit the air, then take up the strain and watch the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. Rise again, rise again, that her name not be lost to the knowledge of men. All those who loved her best and who were with her to the end will make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. For we couldn't leave her there, you see, to crumble into scale. She'd saved our lives so many times, living through the gale, and the laughing drunken rats who left her to a sorry grave, they won't be laughing in another day. But you to whom adversity had dealt the final blow, with smiling bastards lying to you everywhere you go, turn to and put out all your strength of arm and heart and brain, and like the Mary Ellen Carter, rise again. Rise again, rise again, though your heart it be broken and life about to end. No matter what you've lost, be it a home, a love, a friend, like the Mary Ellen Carter, rise again, rise again, rise again, though your heart it be broken and life about to end. No matter what you've lost, be it a home, a love, a friend, like the Mary Ellen Carter, rise again.
Thank you, David. It's always a delight to see you pop up on the screen at our events. All right.
A pleasure.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I can hear that's going to be a bit of an earworm for me, going around the house, rise again. Really, really wonderful stuff. Okay. Oh, here I am. I've lost my spot. I found myself again. Now I get to introduce you, Alan. Alan Davies is the Vice President of the Newport Fiddle and Folk Club and my friend, and without his guidance and support, I would not be coordinating the Newport Storytellers, I can assure you. Alan, I remember when I first heard you tell a version of this story, and it has stayed with me. Alan sent me this note in regards to his story. It's always fascinated me to think that right now, while I'm sitting in front of the computer, there's almost certainly someone in the world who's having a huge life-changing moment. someone being born, someone taking their last breath, etc. So that's where this story comes from. It's the story of what is happening right now.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, when I first thought of this story, I was a bit concerned that it didn't really fit in with the theme of new beginnings. And when I looked through it, I thought, well, there's actually quite a few new beginnings in this story, and a lot more besides. It's an unusual story. It doesn't have a beginning, a middle, or an end, or a plot. There's no quest, no hero, no tension, no resolution. So what is happening right now? None of this is true, but all of it could be. In the Yirrkala Aboriginal community in Arnhem Land, 3 children are laughing because they're laughing, because they're laughing. In Okhotsk, eastern Russia, a man reaches out for his wife's hand, even though he knows it isn't there. In an office tower in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, a man signs a logging contract for 100 hectares of Sumatran rainforest. He looks out the window and thinks about antique glass. In Shenzhen, China, a woman packs her 200th iPod for the day into its white cardboard box. Even though it's against the rules, she leaves a fingerprint in one corner of the screen for someone on the other side of the world to see. In Banda Aceh, Indonesia, a young woman looks up a word in the Bahasa dictionary. The word is homosexual. She reads the definition with awe and wonder and delight and despair. And she says aloud to the empty room, "That's what I am." On an Airbus A350, 36,000 feet above the Indian Ocean, a man gazes lustfully at the shapely flight attendant in her tight-fitting uniform. The flight attendant opens a can of lemonade for a child and gets an idea for chapter 17 of her novel. The child takes the drink and wonders what it will be like to meet her father for the first time at the end of her flight. In Pushkar, India, 4 men are pushing a car. In Zarqa, Jordan, a little girl watches her parents kiss in the kitchen. She will remember that moment her whole life. On the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, 3 women hug and punch the air because they made it. In the lowest gallery of the Mponeng gold mine, 4 kilometres below the surface in South Africa, 2 miners are talking about football tactics, something that neither of them knows anything about. But as their helmet lights play over each other's face, what they're really saying is, "You're my friend, and I trust you." On the island of Vengsøy in Norway, 2 young lovers climax together for the first time. Their cries of ecstasy are heard by disapproving ears. On board the International Space Station, 400 kilometres above the Earth, a man is explaining quantum mechanics to a woman. She smiles and nods, even though she already understands it better than he does. In the city of Faro, Portugal, despite his sore and bleeding fingers, a boy is learning to play Wonderwall on the guitar. On Prince Edward Island, Canada, a man grasps his son's hand for the first time ever as he closes his eyes and his heart stops beating. On a container ship in the South Atlantic, 2 sailors from Thailand are telling jokes about how stupid Cambodians are, loud enough for the Cambodian sailor to hear. In the town of Brewster, Nebraska, USA, her body wet with blood, sweat and tears, a woman cries out for joy as the midwife places her baby on her chest. At Amundsen Scott Base at the South Pole, a woman is typing an email to her lover. She types, "It's not you, it's me," and then deletes it because that's such a cliche. In Quito, Ecuador, a man finds the last error in his computer program. a missing bracket on line 73,169. He whoops as the program opens perfectly and 2 years of work come to fruition. On the island of Cadu, Fiji, a woman and a dog are walking along the beach. The waves roar, the wind howls, the dog barks, and the woman sings. And in Newport, Australia, a storyteller gets to the end of his story, but the story never really ends.
Oh, thank you, Alan. If ever there was a piece that was so perfect for World Storytelling Day, that that would have to be it. Alan was umming and ahhing about whether or not to do that piece, and I love it. It's what in some storytelling circles we call a chain of pearls. And thank you, Alan, for always being on the end of the phone when I get in a tangle. Before we move on to Dharma, I just want to check in with Em. Is there anything happening on the chat that we should be aware of, Em?
Oh yes, just a few things. Adrian has put links to both the text of his story, An Audience of the Master, which is on his Instagram, so you can find the link to that in his chat, along with his YouTube link. And Matilda, who joined us later, said hello to everyone.
Hello, Matilda.
Hello, Matilda.
Hi, everyone.
So while you're there, Matilda, I'll just let you know that episode 6 of the podcast is edited, and Alan will be putting it up very soon, and everyone will be able to hear your song and your interview. So we look forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just hold on a sec. I've just had someone come into my study here. Could you just keep it down a little bit? We live in a weatherboard house here, so the sound comes through. And I don't want it coming through when Dharma is singing, because, Alan, I think it's you now to introduce Dharma.
Indeed, yes. So yes, our next storyteller is, hang on, I've just got to do a little unpin here. Our next storyteller is Dharma Picking. Dharma's been telling stories and singing to the very young for more years than I have fingers and toes. And she has built up a vast repertoire of traditional folk songs and contemporary as well. Her voice is definitely recognised and loved by audiences of all ages. And she's going to wrap up World Storytelling Day for us with a song reflecting the theme, New Beginnings. Over to you, Dharma.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody. My take on new beginnings is that with every new beginning, there's often longing memories left behind. So the song I'm singing is written by Percy French in the mid-1900s. And it was a song he wrote, or words that he wrote on the back of a postcard for when he emigrated, and just his longing memories of the mountains of Mourne where he grew up. The mountains of Mourne are sort of tucked into the southeast corner of Northern Ireland. Molly, this London's a beautiful sight, where the people are working by day and by night. They don't sow potatoes, no barley, no wheat, but there's gangs of them digging gold in the street. At least that's what I've been asked when I was told, so I put my hand up for this digging for gold. But for all that I've found there, I might as well be the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. I believe that when writing one wish you expressed as how the fine ladies in London are dressed. You believe me when, well, if you believe me when asked to a ball, they don't wear no tops to their dresses at all. I've seen them myself and I tell it's the truth. Can't tell if they're bound for a ball or a bar. good start in their fashions now, Mary McCree. The mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. You remember young Peter O'Loughlin, of course. Now he's here and he's head of the force. I saw him one day as I was crossing the Strand. He stopped the whole street with a wave of his hand. And there we stood talking of days long gone, while the whole population of London looked on. But for all the great power, he's wishing like me to be back where the dark morn the Mourne sweeps to sea. I saw England's king from the top of a bus. Still I don't know him, still he claims to know us. And though by the Saxons we once were oppressed, still I cheered, God forgive me, I cheered like the rest. And since he has visited Erin's green shore, we made much better friends than we're done before. When we get what we want and we're quiet as can be, with the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. There are beautiful girls there, will never you mind, beautiful shapes nature ever designed, with lovely complexions of roses and cream. O'Loughlin remarked with regard to the same, that if those roses you venture to sip, the colours may all come away from your lip. So I'll wait for the wild rose that's waiting for me, with the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. I'll wait while the wild rose is waiting for me, where the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dharma.
Worries.
Wonderful as always. And I think that brings our session for tonight to a close. We really hope you enjoyed our session, and of course we invite you all to check in on the Newport Fiddle and Folk Club for live and virtual events. It's all listed on the website at nffc.org.au. Over to you, Jackie.
Yeah, well, a big thank you for me for all of you who tossed your hat in the ring. Em, I think we've had some more messages. I mean, I just checked in a moment ago, but I think we've had some more.
We have. Matilda has very kindly and rightly reminded us that Dharma is her auntie, and she should be very proud, as I'm sure she is, because that was wonderful. Danny has noted that Chain of Pearl Stories is one of her new favourites, and I certainly think that's one of mine.
It's the Newport Fiddle and Folk Club.
Yeah, I was at the back having a bag before, and I heard some singing away.
Yeah, please,
Little unexpected sound there from Derek. Okay, go ahead, Jackie.
I love that. What else, Em?
And Asha has thanked us all for the variety she's been feeding to, who's joining us from India. So we're welcome, and I'm glad that Asha has been able to join us for all our wonderful stories this evening for us and the afternoon for her.
Oh, look, that's lovely, and it's lovely to see Asha there. In the past, and I'm sure we will go back to doing this, we meet in the Newport Community Hub, and there is a smart screen, and we're able to show videos of storytellers, and we even experimented at one point with Skyping people in. And yeah, Asha joined us one night from